Welcome to GalacticConnection.com, one of the most popular blogs on the World Wide Web today for alternative news. Stay tuned for the latest information on our world shift from enslavement to galactic involvement, as well as current intel on any blockages impeding us from our sovereign birthright. Knowledge and self-mastery are key at this time. Our commitment is to present you with the latest breaking conspiratorial articles, off-world messages, exopolitics, cutting-edge technologies and sciences, and also an ever-significant intertwining of spiritual support and metaphysical scope that one needs to dive down the rabbit hole in search for truth with balance. We are truly on the horizon of a new golden age filled with the promise for more love, worldwide peace, and accelerated intuitive skills, where every living being can exist in cohesion and abundance. It is whatever we envision and dream this new world to be. I say to you now, let's redefine the new world to the beginnings of our own precious heaven on earth. Galactic Connection is here to provide the pulse of Mother Earth through an eclectic range of interviews each Tuesday afternoon from 3 to 4:55 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Station 2 on BBS Radio, expanding your perspectives on how we can once and for all take back our freedoms, our joy, and our connection with our mighty I Am presence. Our intention remains true to connect hearts and minds everywhere in order to obtain global unity and galactic and universal acceptance. Our discussions will continue to cover anything to do with galactic society and our involvement with our galactic brothers and sisters. Our guests are experts in their fields, and our radio shows have been coined as some of the most thought-provoking out there. In addition to our daily blog, which runs 365 days a year, we also offer a realm of healing services such as our world-renowned implant removal processes, our spiritual past life clearings, our galactic violet ray alchemy from Alexandra, who shares in the lineage of Merlin, and other cutting-edge healing technologies. Check our site out at GalacticConnection.com now, sending you a wave of light, love, and inspiration, and a personal hug and thank you for listening to our Galactic Connection radio show and visiting our blog today. Good morning, everyone. This is Alexandra Metters of GalacticConnection.com, and this is a pre-recorded interview for Tuesday, April 18th. As you know, this is a very special weekend. We've got the Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday coming around the corner with an amazing amount of changes and shifts and expansions going on across the world. So I could not think of a better time to have this gentleman on. Some of you may not have heard of him yet. His name is Judas Reyna, also known as Five Eagles. He has written a book called Incredulous, and this is what it looks like. Okay. And this book is really fascinating. It's supposedly a fiction story, but it has an immense amount of historical research embedded in it. A really interesting read. I have not gotten through the whole thing, I must admit, but it is very cool. So I want you to get a glimpse of what's behind this guy, his idea, why he wrote this, and the immense amount of research he's done. It says, preserved within the oldest known manuscripts of the Gospels is a version of events that have survived to this present day. Surprisingly, an alternate version of events surrounding the crucifixion has survived, embedded within the four Gospels, despite 2 millennia of biased editing. Boy, is that true. I have spent 3 decades locating and piecing together an image of what transpired 2,000 years ago during the crucifixion. The odd pieces of archaeological anomalies scattered across the planet proved to be most valuable evidence in assembling a picture of the mission Christ came to accomplish and the perplexing origins of humanity. Very true. In order to accomplish this, I deliberately chose the four Gospels, accepted as Holy Scripture by organized religion, as the main body of evidence to back up my claims. 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ successfully demonstrated that a flesh and blood human form could he says, metamorphose into an external light body. That's kind of interesting, the way he wrote that. Within this highly energized region of space, that is exactly what human DNA is designed to do. The theological implications of these new findings extend beyond anything our carefully molded mind is capable of conceiving, startling revelations of humankind's true history and our ultimate destiny. I am a Mayan descent, and the Mayan calendar does not calculate a recurring cyclical event, namely that our sun eclipsing the black hole in the center of the Milky Way galaxy, which occurred in 1998. Instead, what the ancients were tracking was the point at which our solar system would collide with an enormous interstellar gravitational energy field emanating from the supermassive energy source located at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, a galaxy 10,000 times larger than our own. Mainstream science has dismissed ancient accounts of unimaginable destruction as legends or myths, but recent advancements and discoveries in the fields of geology, archaeology, and astronomy seem to suggest otherwise. The ancient monuments that are left behind were left as a warning system for future generations. My research eventually led me to the Anunnaki, that their offspring, the Nephilim, and the part they played during the reptilian invasion of our solar system, approximately 11,500 years ago. All information in my novels pertaining to future events was obtained through visions and dreams. Information pertaining to our past, obtained in this manner, was verified by historical, archaeological, and geological records, a process that sometimes took decades. It must be understood that any information dealing with future is based on the timeline at the time of the viewing, and that is so true. Countless timelines are possible. From an early age, I have been able to see auras, and this ability has aided me in selecting those I have chosen as my closest of friends. I'm experienced in dowsing, the ability to locate objects at a distance. And although I've used remote viewing, I tend to allow the source, the creator of all, to guide me through visions and dreams. Humanity did not fall from grace. We were pushed. And as a collective, we have a right to know what happened and why we now find ourselves on this world at this time. My new work is intended to raise awareness and aid in better understanding the awakening process through a fact-based historical action adventure novel called Incredulous. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's a very amazing amount of work that's been put into this book. Everything from the Templars to the Nazis, to the Anunnaki, to the Greys is discussed in this book, and it's embedded in the story. It's just really a good read. So anyway, stay tuned. I'm going to have Joseph come on in just a few minutes. Hi, everyone. I have Joseph Five Eagles Reyna with me, and boy, do we have a lot in store for you today as far as covering probably some of our most favorite topics. And you know, Joseph, I didn't get to finish your book, but it is an amazing read. And one of the things I just love about it is it's covering all the hottest topics that so many of us research on a regular basis. You know, Antarctica, Solomon's Temple, Knights Templar, you know, the crucifixion of Christ, the catastrophes, the moon, and what is it really? You know, I mean, just I love the way you embedded so much information into this. Even though it's a fictional piece, it still has a lot of truth in it, and it really inspires the individual to think about things in a different way, which I love. You know, I love looking at anything through a more expansive galactic lens. So I kind of want to just start off with, can you tell us a little bit about you? Because I think your way of writing is so refreshing. It's very different and it's very timely. I know you know that. I know that you kind of feel like this is a mission for you to get this information out and increase awareness. But you have mentioned that you're a Mayan and that you're able to see auras, and you actually saw apparitions when you were very young. Can you tell us a little bit about how that influenced you on the path where you are now?
Well, when I was growing up, it was a haunted house that I lived in, and I would wake up screaming. One time I levitated out of where I was kept. There was a crib with a mosquito net over it, and I was hanging onto the sheets when I got pulled off the bed, flew across the room, and tore the actual cover on the mattress thing there and slammed on the wall and then hit the floor. So when my parents turned on the lights, I was on the opposite side of the room and I had my eyes closed. I wouldn't open them. I didn't want to see what I had just seen. So one night there was this deer at the door of the kitchen. The door was open. It was hot. There was no AC. And my mom made sure a light was always on for me, so I was underneath the light. My brother was asleep in the crib. I had to have been about 3.5 years old, and there was a mosquito net over us. So the screen door, there's a deer there, and it's a little smaller, just a little bit smaller than a big buck, but it was a buck, and it had its antlers. And between the antlers, it was glowing. The whole thing was glowing. Between the antlers was a crucifix floating there, a golden crucifix. I later found out that this deer appeared to St. Hubert of the Roman Catholic Church, and it's used as the logo for Jägermeister. So that's the same deer. It spoke to him, and after that, the hauntings went away. So I knew there was more to this world from a very early age. Growing up, I wanted to be an exorcist for the Roman Catholic Church. When I went to the Marine Corps and I was part of the Roman Catholic, I was part of I don't know what, like a priest. I would put on the robes and I would help the priest handing out the wafers and things like that, because that's the direction I wanted to go. And he couldn't see why I was doing that. And I told him, well, you don't skydive, hang glide, shoot machine guns in the Vatican. So I wanted to do all that stuff, get that out of the way, and I wanted to become an exorcist. And he assured me they were doing away with those exorcists. They didn't believe in that kind of stuff. And right now I know that New York has 4 full-time exorcists. Chicago has 2 full-time exorcists, and they're just trained over 300 last year. So,
interesting you bring that up. I had somebody I interviewed brought this up. Who was it? I can't think. Anyway, they said that there's been a substantial decline in the number of priests that are allowed to do exorcisms. There is the key. And I think it was Kevin Annette, and we were talking about how exorcisms are part of the Catholic, this goes way back with the Catholics. So were you motivated to become an exorcist, I'm going to say priest? Were you motivated because of that experience, or was it because... I
wanted to help people who were going through what I was going through as a child. Stop that.
So you wanted to kind of nip it in the bud.
Right.
Now, you have such an amazing background, because you're talking about how you wanted to be a priest, and yet you went into the Marine Corps and you were a recon ranger.
Well, no, I wasn't a recon ranger. I skydived, I scuba dived. Recons are crazy. I did not want to be a recon ranger.
I know that.
I was selected to be a sniper for sniper training. I was already a marksmanship instructor for a year and a half, but I didn't want that on my record book. I was the one training the snipers. Why did I need to be a sniper? So anyway, I'm very, very good with weapons, and I enjoyed that, but I cautioned everyone, don't go in the Marine Corps. So many tried to commit suicide during training. This is old school, when I grew through it. So the priest, however, I'm explaining I want to be an exorcist, right? And he doesn't believe in any of that. And I explained some of the stuff that happened when I was growing up. And they had just re-released The Exorcist, and I saw it for the first time about a week earlier. And I explained when the kid's on the bed bouncing and her head's hitting, she's flying up and her feet are hitting, she's going like that. And they said, oh, it's muscle spasms. I said, I don't think so. So I told him, okay, so what is the procedure for exorcism? And he says, okay, you're a priest, someone in your congregation think there's a situation at their home, you go investigate it, you check it out, you think there might be something there, you write a report, send it to your bishop. The bishop, if he's intrigued, he'll come check it out. If he thinks there's something there, he'll write to the cardinals in Rome. The cardinals will then look it over. If they decide they should send an exorcism, a committee will be held. And well, how long does all this take? It's about 2 years. 2 years. And I'm like, well, this kid's got to go through it. What if I just go over there? I'm like, he came out of his chair. Oh, no, you can't do that. I'm like, what? I said, it's not the Pope doing this, getting the exorcism done. It's the Holy Spirit. And I can't do it on my own. And he said, well, okay, you're a Marine. You can't just go shoot someone. The general has to tell you to go do that. And I said, yeah, but this is different. He goes, no. Once you're in there, you're like a soul. You have to follow orders. And that was my last day as a Marine. So my mom didn't take it too well.
That's hilarious. Well, so then, after that, is that when you started doing your research?
Well, I found a book when I was in Camp Pendleton in Oceanside, and the book was Mysterious Spaceship Moon. I read it. I was intrigued. I did the research. Back then, there wasn't internet or a whole lot of research you could do. But the moon was definitely artificial based on the evidence and the moon landings. So from there, I just kind of kept that in the back of my head. and I had done exorcisms, I have done healings, and I came across an individual who said to me that I had walked with Christ. Many had said that when they see me, and I said, I kind of feel that that was true.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me some stuff about Christ. She said he had an identical twin brother, and that was kind of threw me off. And so then the evidence, the information, she was a historian at one point, and she used to go through a special organization they had with the older professors. They'd go into monasteries, and they were funded by wealthy individuals to bribe the priests and get into the libraries and read them. And she had read this information. I mean, literally, the genealogy of Jesus, that he had an identical twin brother. But when he was born, they didn't know what to do with the second child because the prophecy only spoke of one and only named the first one, Yeshua. So the child was given to the midwife who assisted to raise the child, and she was named Leah. She was the wife of the high priest at the time, Simon. So Judah would be raised as a prince of Judea, a priest. And so they figured, okay, that takes care of that. And there's another book out there called The Moon Beneath Her Feet, and I don't remember the woman's name. It's a difficult name to pronounce, but she has the same story, because I was talking to this guy is a journalist, and I wanted a journalist to read the book and try and tear it apart. That's why I created it. And the only reason I back up so much data is because I knew people would try and tear it apart, especially the academics. And the book was so difficult to read with all the footnotes. It was laborious. I finally just had to rewrite it into a more free-flowing story. And I did it that way, like the Matrix. Some people will be entertained, other people will see the message that's there.
Yeah. Oh, it's got messages all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. You've done a fantastic job. Seriously.
Thank you. He led me to this book, The Moon Beneath Her Feet, and she says the same thing. Jesus had an identical twin brother, and they were separated at birth. I'm like, what? And her information was based on the Quran, and I didn't know Jesus was mentioned in the Quran. And it mentions in the Quran that Jesus and Judas was so like in appearance to Jesus, his mannerism and speech, that they were hard to distinguish between the two. So it was Judas who was the identical twin brother. Okay, so now I knew this, and in the Last Supper, where you've got what is Mary Magdalene to this side, on the left side is the duplicate, the twin. And when Jesus is supposed to pass at the Last Supper, he's supposed to pass it to the left side. So he passes it to Judas. And although everybody saw him pass it, to whom I pass it, that's who it is, right? Who's going to turn me in, basically. So he hands it to Judas, but he has to hand it to everybody else. Nobody takes a piece. So they didn't catch the obvious. And that I didn't know. I didn't know that's how they did it, how they sat in the procedure. I had to learn all of that. I didn't know that Passovers occur on full moons. I knew the moon of the calendar of the Jews was aligned to the moon, to the new moon, but I did not know that Passovers, all their holy holidays, are aligned to full moons. That's where we had the 4 tetrarch moons, all fall on holidays for the Jews, because the moons occur every 19 years or something, but all their holidays fall on the full moon. Back then, they didn't have a whole lot of street lighting, so it makes sense to do that. Anyway, the moon on the night Jesus was crucified, on the day he was crucified actually, had left orbit and reversed itself, causing a massive earthquake. That's where the destruction occurred. It placed itself over the crucifixion site, and it was much closer to Earth than a regular eclipse would have been. And this caused problems for Rome, because Rome was celebrating Sol Invictus, the celebration of their invisible sun god, on the day that the spring equinox, and here's the moon blocking everything. And they feared eclipses back then, because an eclipse was a warning of the death of a king. So here's the whole universe saying this is the King of Kings.
Sure.
And after that, it left. When he died, the moon went back and caused a second earthquake. And when it came around, it caused another eclipse, a bright red eclipse, because of all the earthquakes that had taken place. The dust going around, the light going through the dust made it more red. And both of them were ominous warnings for Israel, and meant that signified the blood was over their heads. His blood was over their heads.
I'm mesmerized by how you've connected the dots, and I know you feel very strongly. You want people to understand that a lot of the information you've received was divine. was through your own guidance, and then you went and tackled it with research to connect
Academic
dots.
research.
I do the same thing. I do the exact same thing. The other thing I wanted to interject is not only did Jesus have a twin, I have received messages, because I was there definitely and very much involved in his family, that he and Judas were actually very close friends, and that Judas would actually stand in for Jesus when the heat got really hot, and they were actually trying to track them down and find them and that sort of thing. And I can't wait to hear what you found out about that. But I've actually received information saying that the whole three being hung at the cross, and supposedly one of them was a thief and the other one was somebody else, I don't remember, it was actually Judas and another one, is what I've been told.
Well, the evidence I have showed that it was Cestus and Gastus. They were both disciples of Jesus.
Disciples.
Five that Judas had selected to train, and they were zealots. Each of the 12 was selecting 5 and training them, and that's where you get the additional 60 disciples from. So they knew who he was.
Have you heard about Jesus supposedly being the king of Edessa, and the whole reason that he was harassed by the Roman government was because he refused to pay taxes?
No, I haven't, but I know the king of Odessa wrote a letter to Jesus, asking for healing, and Jesus wrote him back, and he said, "I can't make it, but I will send one of my disciples," because the whole Passover thing was about to happen. This was found by another priest, and I was going to look up his name, and I was so busy trying to get ready for this interview.
Okay.
And this priest followed Ramtha, J.Z. Knight, and Ramtha said Jesus had an identical twin brother. I did not know that until the book was almost published. Well, then I researched the work of this priest, and he looked for information, and what he found in the records of Odessa, in the library of Odessa, the letter that the king sent to Jesus, the letter Jesus sent back to him, and the disciple who showed up with the Shroud of Turin to heal him. And he was sent there by Thomas. So Thomas shows up, and then Thomas is made the saint of Odessa. And he says his name was Judas, but he was also called Thomas, and he had with him Jesus' 3-year-old son named Jacob. And I found out a lot about the genealogy of it. The child did not come from Jesus. They had a custom that if a firstborn son, or any man, died, especially the firstborn, and his wife did not have a child, then she had to be redeemed by the second brother in line. He had to marry her and give her a child. The child would be called the child of the first brother, and she would have the inheritance. Otherwise, she'd have nothing. And that goes all the way back to the story of Tamar, who was one of Jesus' grandmothers. And so it was still the same bloodline, but it wasn't Jesus' child. It was Judas and Mary Magdalene's child.
Fascinating.
And his name was Jacob.
So have you found anything out as far as the involvement of the disciples at the time of the crucifixion? What part did they play in that whole escapade?
Yeah, I go into that in detail, and the second book has quite a bit more of that information in it. But during the Pentecost part, 50 days later, this is another part that the disciples played. They really were not, how would I say, they were afraid. They had been afraid, and they weren't really sure what to do, but they were told to wait, and they waited. And then Penta, meaning 50 in Greek, Pentecost, 50 days after the crucifixion, then the Holy Spirit came upon them, and now they were emboldened, and that's when they went out and preached and did all the healings and all the work. Before that, they were just regular men who were quite terrified they could be executed next. But Peter got up there, and he wasn't like a great orator. He mentions the prophecy of Joel to these men who are saying, "What's going on? Are you drunk?" He said, according to Joel, on the great and awesome day of the Lord, the sun will grow dark at noon, and the moon will be turned to blood. And that was one of the signs of the Messiah. And they understood that. And 3,000 understood Jesus was the Messiah that had been promised to him. They didn't convert and become Christians. There was no such thing as Christians. They were still Jews, and they were still going to the temple just like Jesus had. But they understood what they had seen a few days earlier, and they couldn't understand what it was. No one could.
Have you done quite a bit of research on the relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene?
Yes, I have. Mary Magdalene was very young. She was like a teenager still. And I was going to say something else and I can't remember. When Jesus was on the cross, in the end of the Gospels, where Mary Magdalene goes to place the stuff in the tomb, and she sees Jesus, and she calls him Rabbi. That's the way they translate it in the Bible, Rabbi. That was not the word she used. The word is Rabbani. And Jesus said, don't call yourselves Rabbi. Do not take that title upon you. We're not priests. We're not of that bloodline. You can't just grab a script, get on the street corner and start waving it around, and you call yourself a priest. Those bloodlines were carefully guarded, and they had to bring you in, instruct you, and then you'd be appointed a priest, and that didn't happen very often. So they weren't priests, and he said, do not use the word rabbi, but Rabbani means darling or dearest. So the clues are all over. Also in the list of women, Mary Magdalene is always mentioned first, and then his mother. Their culture was very much like the culture under Sharia law. You would, when women are born over there, their birth dates aren't recorded because it's a waste of paper and ink. That's exactly the way they see it. So to even put her name down at all, they don't understand why they would have done that, because if a woman was trying to, in court, present evidence, it was useless. But in the list, they mentioned Mary Magdalene first, and you would not put a woman there before the man's mother unless it was his wife. So the signs are all over it once you understand the culture. But we don't understand the culture. We were never taught the culture. We were taught there's only one Messiah, and that's not true. There were two. There always had to be two. And that's why when the Jews later voted on individuals to be messiahs, there were 3 different occasions. They had the Messiah who was of the line of David, the king, and the Messiah who was of the line of the Levites, or of Aaron, who were the priests. So you had the prophet and you had the king. And John the Baptist was the prophet, and Jesus was supposed to be the king. So at the end, they're in the temple when they question him, and he says, by what rights do you do this? By what power? I will tell you if you can tell me if John the Baptist was prophet. Well, they couldn't say he was, because that would mean the Messiah was present.
Wow. Very
Jesus was a rebel when he'd say, have you not read, to the Pharisees, to the scribes, and it says to the scribes, and he comes out, have you not read? That's all these guys ever did, is read. So that was an insult, a slap in the face to them. And we don't see that because we don't understand the culture. Also, you were not allowed to write down a script the way we are in Catholic school or any kind of school where you're supposed to memorize these little verses. They write them down for you and you read them. You cannot. It's considered a living thing. You cannot write it down on a piece of paper and take it with you. So their memories were incredible. They could recite entire books, and they were trained to do that.
Yeah, plus they would go into the halls and they would, basically reflect on how they interpreted a script or a manuscript,
Right.
Very normal, common.
This is very important, right? And this is very important because Jesus was arrested, correct? He was arrested. Now, if you, let's say you're at that time and you're a male and you're allowed to speak on this stuff and you're saying something that I don't think is correct, I'll stop you and I'll explain to you why I think you're incorrect. If you continue to do this, I have to have someone else who agrees that they think what you're saying is wrong. Both of us will then go and report you. If this guy's saying something we think is wrong, so they'll call you forward before them, and then they'll say, what is it you're saying? And then they'll get it all straightened out. But there have to be 2 arresting witnesses, and the witnesses have to be on site at the same time, on the same day, in the same location. That's why the 2 witnesses who were called to testify for Jesus, it was on different days, different locations, and they said 2 things that were slightly different. So they were false witnesses. Their testimony could not be accepted. They weren't lying. It just didn't match perfectly. So precise was their system of justice. And that's why they kept trying to follow all the rules, not because they arrested Jesus, but because Pilate arrested Jesus for a Roman offense because he was guilty of it. The Jews then rearrested him so he wouldn't be kept in their prison, wouldn't create a riot, and then they convened a Sanhedrin as quickly as possible, an emergency, and tried to find something to pin on him so then they could take it before what's his name, the Emperor Tiberius
Yeah.
and prevent the execution of Jesus that morning, because that would cause a riot, and they knew it would cause war. And they were trying to save their own hides. They weren't trying to save Jesus.
Yeah.
And all they were trying to do is find something they could pin on him to postpone his execution, so it wouldn't happen during the holidays. Passover wasn't the only holiday. There were 7 days after that they celebrated the Feast of Bread.
That's amazing. So, in your opinion, what do you think Jesus's mission was?
It wasn't to save sinners. That was what we would call the Savior God religions. Before Jesus was ever born of a virgin mother in a cave or a barn, and then had disciples, got baptized, performed miracles. Dionysus changed water to wine at weddings so often. He's considered the god of wine, and he was one of these individuals. He rode into Athens on a donkey. He was betrayed, he was crucified, and he resurrected from the dead. So did Mithra, so did Horus. All of them were betrayed and crucified. Jesus was not betrayed. Nothing in the most ancient writings state that Jesus was betrayed. Now, when he's at the Last Supper, he says to the disciples, I no longer call you my disciples. I call you my friends, philos, brotherly love. You are my friends. But when Judas approaches with the arresting party, because he has to be the witness to identify him, at the garden, Jesus uses the word comrade. Not we have many words for friend there. So comrade, that is the closest, the highest order of friend. And he's the only one that's ever identified as Jesus' comrade. He says, comrade, what are you doing here?
Very interesting. And so how do you see Mary's involvement at the time of the arrest? Did you get into any of that?
Mary was a princess, I believe the tribe of Benjamin. And I've got to remember this guy's name. I think his last name is Henry.
William Henry?
Yeah, he works with the blue apples, a lot of stuff on blue apples. Remember at the beginning of my book, I start out with that thing with Rennes-le-Chateau and the blue apples. Now, behind the altar of Rennes-le-Chateau is Mary, the statue of Mary, mother, and Joseph, and they're each holding a Christ child, another hint to the twins.
Yes.
That there were two.
Yeah.
Okay, so the blue apples, I didn't know what the blue apples were, but I was instructed to put that in there. That at midday, blue apples. I now know what they are, and I did not want to release that information in the second book. I thought it was way too dangerous, but they assured me 2012 is over. That particular bottleneck in time is gone. They can't go back in time anymore, so you can release it. I still had my scruples about it. I was concerned that information should not ever get out, ever. Are you familiar with the work of Dolores Cannon?
Yes.
Okay, she said something horrible happened in the future, that she didn't know what it was. And we were asked to come back, be born, basically mind wiped as humans, and then try and find a way back to Creator, and thereby raising consciousness.
Absolutely.
The first waves that came said every single individual who came back was a master of light, and you were a warrior. You could not be sent into this much darkness to try and turn it into light if you were not. And you had to have been human before, otherwise you weren't going to make the transition. And a lot of people committed suicide trying to make the transition. Well, I found out that we were from the future, and that answered so many questions for me, because I remember I did not want to come here. I fought it, said I don't see why I need to be back there.
You know how many people feel that way?
Yeah.
You know how many people feel that way?
But once I saw what was going on, I was shown the horrible thing that happened in the future.
Yes.
Blue apples, I'll explain it, and I'll explain it rather quickly because it will take me hours to really give you an understanding. But Mary had these in her possession. Do you recall when in Moses they get to the land of Canaan and he sends 12 spies into the land in groups of two?
Yeah.
And then Joshua and Caleb come back and they're holding what looks like a huge cluster of grapes between themselves. They're almost touching on the ground. Those were not grapes. Those are called the blue apples. Those were used to operate star portals, stargates. And they took them from the Nephilim. They say, we took them, and some Bibles say the giants, but they took them from the Nephilim. And this is fruit that grows on the tree of life. So they're, according to William Henry, they come from the center of the galaxy. And I'm like, how do you get anything out of the center of the galaxy? That was a mystery to me. And I was shown that in this area, at midday, blue apples, we are in the photon band. You understand that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, we've entered the photon band. This is midday for the galaxy. A galaxy we're not a part of. We're part of another galaxy called the Sagittarius Dwarf Galaxy, which is being ripped apart, and that's why the Milky Way is such a weird angle. Anyway, we're at midday. We're in the photon band. And this photon band causes anything we believe to be more powerful, which is why pharmaceuticals in the phase 3 training right now, testing of their drugs, they're failing miserably because placebos are working better. And that's why when we pray to stop the Ebola, it stopped. Whatever we unite our minds in right now, because of the energy that's there, becomes reality. Your healings are much more powerful than they have ever been, are they not?
Yes, I totally agree with that.
Because of the power we're moving into.
Right. And I also feel, Joseph, that yes, unification's a really big deal, but because at this time, because of how crucial it is and how many souls it impacts, the outcome that we're going through right now, there has been, I don't know if I'm going to use the word dispensation or a special ability on the part of, if you're one individual who connects with Creator or God or whatever, and you're making a pure, clean connection, and you are with all sincerity requesting a shift or change that is affecting the all. It's affecting all humanity, all animals, anything with a consciousness. You will be, that it's kind of like that will be instantaneously agreed upon.
True, and I caution anyone who does that to end it with the highest good. May it be for the highest good.
And best good of all involved.
Because it may not be for the highest good, and we're pushing it in the wrong direction.
But true, but there's also been, this is just the information I'm continuing to get and seeing with my own two eyes. There has also been an immense amount of agreements and decisions made, even future timelines that we are constantly, creating and all what we call the tree of life.
Jumping timelines.
Okay, that's getting shut down because we are getting to a place where we're really getting close, and from what I understand, there's this greater force that is basically at a place where, okay, we're not going to allow all of us to go backwards when so much effort of a huge, source of souls have contributed to try to get us to where we are now. Just like you said, I've been told I'm here from the future. I've been told that I came here to make sure we stopped this particular timeline that was going to create horrific, basically we were going to completely remove our existence. It was that bad. And so I know that's one of the reasons why we wholeheartedly decided to come back into this hell. But we are getting...
It was worse than that. What I was shown was worse than that. You understand what the New World Order wanted to create on Earth. They wanted to create slave camps, work camps.
Absolutely.
They would have all the freedom in the world, except you would not, and they would have birthing centers. And at these birthing centers, when a child is born, if they're spiritual, they're eliminated. In case they want workers, they just want people that are just going to do what they're told, and they would run the world forever. Well, picture this spread out across the galaxy.
Before you go on, that's nothing new.
Right.
That's been going on for like ever.
They spread this across the galaxy, and the way they did it, the reptilians, across the third, fourth, and fifth dimensions, they controlled it completely.
Yeah.
And the way they did it was they got their hands on millions of blue apples. And how did they do that? Well, in this region, the photon band, crystals grow in people's heads, and they're magnetic in nature. And I was shown the weapons that were developed from these crystals. They have to be energized by the shockwave that's coming, and they have to be in a human brain. And when they're energized with shockwave, you take this kind of like a dilithium crystal. It's from pure energy from the center of the galaxy, which is the highest order of love and joy of Creator that can be experienced in this reality. So I placed it in the weapon, and it would hover because it was magnetic in nature. And when I pulled the trigger and fired it, there was no like a bullet moving. It was just instantaneous destruction of an angel or anything they fired on. And it was destroyed on several dimensions that were close to this one. And with the amount of blue apples they had, they could transport entire battle fleets into the fourth and fifth dimension. And they basically carried across the galaxy a new world order where they controlled everything, and we would be eliminated if we were trying to come back into it. So there was no way to stop it. And I found it so fascinating with the X-Men, that one movie where they're losing and they're not going to win. So Logan has to go back into the past and try and stop the war before it ever happens. And that's kind of what we did. We were sent to the past and try and mitigate the damage of the apocalypse. That's what we're supposed to do.
That fits in with some of the information I've received from another light worker who was shown, schematics, okay, from her guidance of how they were going to go about shutting down the 3rd through the 5th dimensional, bands, so that it was like an entrapment, that part of us would be stuck here perpetually forever. And that's huge, to prevent that from happening. But they didn't succeed.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting that they didn't, because the apocalypse is not going to take place. According to Bible code, it should have happened right around 2006. The end would have been right around 2013, right at the beginning of 2012. The Jewish years overlap 2 years at a time. You recall Comet Ison?
Absolutely. I remember blogging about it, yeah.
Were you looking forward to seeing something 16 times brighter than the moon in the sky?
Yeah, and it wasn't anything like that.
Okay. Do you recall Sighting Spring getting close to Mars?
No.
Okay, I have a site. I don't have a website because I don't like going to websites that haven't been updated since 2008. I didn't want to do that to me.
That makes sense.
In Facebook, I have the Acolyte's Quill, and I post videos in there, not my videos, videos of other individuals that have done amazing work. Well, this one doctor was videotaping Mars as Sighting Spring was going by, and Mars was exploding with like CMEs coming off of it. The atmosphere was igniting because Mars has a very weak electromagnetic field, and in the let's call it the Thunderbolts project, everything is electrical in nature and interacts with each other. So as a comet came by, it interacted with the planet's atmosphere, and the planet is lit up like it's exploding on fire.
I remember that. Didn't it turn? It turned green though too. Was there a time when it turned green?
It melted the poles, created clouds and weather patterns. Basically, terraformed a planet in a couple of days. Now, Comet Ison would have done worse. In Bible code, the year 2012 only shows up once, 5772, and it's Earth is in there in that particular matrix, and there's a word comet in there as well, and then the word annihilated across the Earth. Earth was annihilated by Ison. And the reason it was annihilated was because they've been spraying all these chemtrails which have aluminum in it, and aluminum will ignite. And because of the electrical interference with Ison, our entire atmosphere should have ignited and killed everyone on the planet. So this one fleet that I'm in touch with disassembled it. And remember, the Russians, when you were looking at it, the Russians were saying something's moving, and they were releasing videos that objects were moving around the comet. So that's why Saturn and Jupiter now have additional moons from the first time they were counted when the space flights of Voyager went through. They now have more moons because they placed them around there. And Ison was so small, I couldn't see it with a telescope. So they did not want to take any chances with it causing a reaction here on Earth and killing everyone and everything.
Now I remember this whole thing because I remember blogging it. But the other thing that's interesting, you're talking about the blue apples and crystals in the head and that kind of thing. The latest information about the chemtrails, because they've kind of changed things up a little bit lately. There'll be a couple days where you won't have a whole lot of spraying, and then you'll have like deluged, and there's crosses. They're like hash marks, in the sky. But they've upped the lithium content, supposedly. And this allows them to trace the energetic connection between yourself and where you're getting your guidance, where you're connecting to.
Okay.
I want to pass that on to you. Felt like I need to tell you that. Anyway, go ahead.
So let me connect the blue apples to Rennes-le-Chateau, Mary Magdalene, and Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay. Rennes-le-Chateau, there is a window there that on January, I believe it's 17th, they would cast on the wall 3 blue lights, and they were called the blue apples. Okay. The mayor of that town was so upset with how much tourism they were getting, he actually covers the window so you can't see that anymore. Now, when Jesus resurrected Lazarus, and that's what the window depicts, Jesus resurrecting Lazarus, every depiction of Jesus doing it for 6 centuries, especially throughout the catacombs, shows him holding a wand like Harry Potter. And at the end of the wand is what looks like the clover leaf, 3 of the the suit in the deck card. So you've got these three little spheres. Those were blue apples, and Mary Magdalene was a princess who had been given some of these to in her care because she was a priestess, and she gave them to him. Now, when you have three of these, you create a morphogenic field around you that is not Earth anymore. It's as if you were in the center of the galaxy, and you're in a higher dimension, and whatever you think instantaneously becomes reality. So by holding those, he instantaneously reanimated Lazarus, who'd been dead for 4 days. And that's what that means.
Wow. Okay. Does this have anything to do with the depiction of the fleur-de-lis then?
No, the fleur-de-lis is a little different.
Totally different?
It has to do with the Merovingians and their bloodlines. It's just a symbol for them. And it also goes back to Jesus, the triune God,
Okay.
three aspects of Creator, the Mother, Father, and the child.
Okay. I just want to make sure because everything's
From what I've been able to get.
well, everything's about the threes, as you know.
So I researched some other possibilities of this, and there is a company in Switzerland, and you can Google this stuff. It's called Primordial Code. I have not gotten the book on that one yet. I've been reading so many others.
I heard about this. Somebody else told me to go buy that book.
What they did was I don't know if they were familiar with the morphogenic field. But they wanted to know what would happen to seeds if we grew them shielded from the Earth's magnetic field. Now, you've heard that when this planet X comes by, the Earth's magnetic fields collapse as the planet does a shift, and people lose their memories if they're not within the magnetic field. Are you aware that the astronaut, the first cosmonaut that was sent into space, started losing his memory? They could not get him down. They had to send another guy up there to get him down. When he was a blithering idiot, when they got him back, didn't know his name, it was not reversible. He forgot everything because he was standing outside Earth's magnetic field. Our space station has a magnetic field that was invented by Dr. Carl Bogg. He has a museum up here in Texas, Glen Rose, Texas, just southwest of Fort Worth, and it's called Creation Evidence Museum. And he recreated Earth's magnetic field to the time of Noah based on the information they had in the geology records. And back then, with that strong magnetic field, the venom in rattlesnakes is non-poisonous, and everything lives longer than it should. And so they used his design and they gave him an award for it, to create this magnetic field, this artificial field in the space station, so the astronauts would not lose their memory and be able to function out there.
That's interesting too, because I have been told that the origins of this so-called space did not include magnetism, that it was strictly electrical. This contained space, I haven't dived into that, but it's totally contrary to everything that we've researched, but it would answer quite a few questions about the magnetism. And the fact that, magnetism and electricity, of course, you have the polarity that comes forth from those two. You made a comment in this, that it says the ancient monuments that are left behind were left as a warning system for future generations. I thought that was pretty interesting, and I really wanted to ask what your take is on the what you feel the true purpose is for the obelisks, the pyramids. Who do you feel was responsible ultimately for the creation of those?
The Anunnaki. And the other ones, so the ones that like Stonehenge, those are the ones I was referring to more than any others. And this work is done by Graham Hancock. He came to this conclusion, and I agreed with him. Do you follow Wormwood Systems Observers at all? WSO?
I have heard about them. I don't follow them. I'm too busy, frankly.
They did some fascinating things. They got a group together to send atmospheric weather balloons into space with cameras on them to see if they could find Planet X, and sure enough, they found it. It's out there. I've seen it myself. I photographed it, and I still have problems with it being there because we should be getting a lot more damage on the Earth if it's as powerful as they say it is. Anyway, the monuments, WSO, they did a tremendous job this last winter equinox, where the sun, if you're standing in Stonehenge or any one of these ancient monuments, you would know where the sun is supposed to be, right? It has to be.
Okay.
It goes all the way to the one side of the chart of the system, and then it goes all the way to the other for spring. I mean, for the summer solstice, and then back to the winter, back and forth. It was off by 17 degrees. And that is a warning. So if you were paying attention to it, it wasn't to grow your crops. Once you start seeing this deviation, it's coming back, prepare. That was what the simple warning system was.
And it's Wormwood Observation Systems.
WSO, Wormwood Systems Observers.
Observers. Okay, cool. I'll make a note.
They've been given a lot of misinformation, and they've kind of gone in the wrong direction. But they did do a lot of good work, and their heart's in the right place.
A lot of people talk about wormwood. What's your take on that? I'm sure you researched that.
Yeah, I thought that Yellowstone was wormwood, because if it went off, if there is radioactive material there, it would be radioactive, and radioactivity caused water to become bitter, just like wormwood did if you put wormwood in water, and so they call it wormwood because they had no other reference to it. And the Chinese state that after the red dust that covers the earth, the first thing to grow was wormwood. And that was another connection to it. And then Chernobyl was called wormwood in their language in the Ukraine. So when it melted down, some people who were studying this thought, well, that's got to be wormwood. But no, wormwood affects the whole planet. And I thought, no, it's not big enough.
Wow. And yet, if you take it herbally, it's one of the most fantastic anti-parasites.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, definitely. You take it with cloves, wormwood, cloves, and I'm forgetting the other one. Dr. Hulda Clark is really big on that.
Well, you asked me, why did Jesus come? What was his mission? I believe his mission was to show us that we could attain a light body. Now, if you follow any of Wilcox's work with the light body, the rainbow body, he demonstrates that these are recorded instances, over 150,000 recorded instances of people in the Far East achieving a light body. And Jesus was there. There's paintings of him there. It's engraved into the walls by kings that Saint Isa was there. That's what they called him, Isa. And Mary, his mother, was there with him as well. So he also did some stuff he said didn't go over very well with people. But he learned of the light bodies. And the way you accomplish a light body is for 26 years. You must have nothing but joy and love in your heart and kindness towards others and no thought of ill toward another human being. I don't think I could do that personally, but these guys did it. So when they die, they know they're going to die. They go lay down and they get covered up, and then their body starts glowing with like rainbow. And then the rainbow can be seen over the house. And then the actual form shrinks down to this little body, like a mini human doll. That was whatever, this form here. And then this person can reappear to people, and he's got a light body. Okay, and this is well documented and well understood, but very few can do that for 26 years. Now, Jesus did it in 3 days. He achieved his light body in 3 days. So the resurrection, a traumatic incident. Remember, he's being crucified. When the men from what's his name? Not Sparta, the rebel against Rome. I can't remember his name. I keep thinking Sparta is not his name. The rebel who was taking on the slave who led the rebellion against Rome and almost overthrew Rome. They had made a movie with I can't remember Kirk Douglas. Anyway, I swear I can't remember his name. He what was I talking about that? I can't remember why I was talking about that. They wiped me completely. What were we talking about?
I don't know, man.
Oh, the light body. When you're being crucified, when they were crucifying these guys, they were urinating on the faces of the Romans, doing this to them. And if you were on a cross, they would actually climb up and cut your tongue out if you were screaming all these obscenities to them. And the pain from the cross, they knew, was so horrific. They specifically designed it this way. They created the word excruciating from the cross. The pain is that bad. So Jesus was on the cross, but he's not yelling at them like that. He's forgiving them.
Yeah.
And he's not doing these things.
Totally blew their minds, right?
Right. Well, that was the energy behind the transition to the light body. When he became a light body, he was able to change his appearance. He was able to bilocate. He was able to walk through walls. He was able to hug people. He was able to eat. He was able to be touched. When Judas put his fingers in his, it was Thomas put his fingers in the wound to show that he was real. So that's what a light body is. And that's what Jesus' mission was, to show us an example that a human being could transition into a light body. And that's very important for what's about to happen.
Yeah.
This took me into, again, they showed me more stuff, more visions, and I had to write them down as fast as I could before I could forget them. And later in the day, I tried to recall them. It was like trying to grasp a smoke, but I'd go back to my notes and then it would come back to me. And what they showed me was that Thomas Bianca interpreted the Hopi prophecy wrong. And so I had to do research on Thomas Bianca and the Hopi prophecies. And the Hopis didn't have prophecy rock in their prophecies. They didn't bring it forward 50,000 years. They had other prophecies they brought forward, but not that one. After the dropping of the gourd of ashes, which is the atomic bomb, the highest misuse of fire by the white race. The white race was given fire. Inside the jet engine is a fire. Inside the car is a fire. Everything that is fire, they have mastery over that. But this was going in the wrong direction. And no one ever described what the gourd of ashes was, but they said it would be dropped in the sky and people would wither like blades of grass before a prairie fire. And that's exactly what this thing was to them. So Thomas Bianco was selected to go about the land that they were on and search for what was left behind for us to interpret. He found it, and it was actually a landfill there. Whenever you see the videos on it, they say, "Oh, we found this," and he cleaned up. Or they didn't say it was a landfill. They had to clean it up because they had been using it for a landfill. And he found those etchings on the rock. And on top, you see these human beings that are all holding hands in the different ages of man. What they don't show you when they're writing it in, blacking it in, the last guy is holding onto an arm that's going up, and the timeline they're on is jumping up in quadrants, the way when you heat up a coffee cup or heat up a piece of steel, it doesn't do a smooth transition. It jumps up in quadrants, in entire jumps. So it holds that temperature and jumps to the next one. And you have to have specialized equipment to see that. But he thought this was man's end, because they're just wiped out. Okay, but the smart ones who were down on the earth, and you have to look at this picture. The guy is really decrepit looking, like a monkey that got hit by a garbage truck or something. He's leaning over. He's got a cane. He's got an arm out with the tail should be coming out. And he's holding, I don't know if he's holding the cane with that one, but next to him is a plant, and it doesn't look very healthy. All right, so what I was shown was that those individuals went underground. They went into the deep underground military bunkers. Mm-hmm. And you've got the circles. He said the three great shakings, the three circles. Well, you've got two circles, definitely two great shakings, two world wars. But the third one is not a circle. It's a D on its side. It's a cave entrance. They entered the cave. They went down, and they got trapped there when the earth shook and all the transition happened with the shockwave hit. The shockwave transitioned the guys on top, turned them into light bodies, and earth ascended with them. They ascended with earth, rather. The guys on the bottom were trapped, and they couldn't get out, and they couldn't do anything. Now, this was fascinating because once I found all this out, I went back to when Eisenhower was met in the desert by those aliens who were abducting humans, because they said, we are from the future. And we went down into these underground bunkers, and we were trapped. And after a time, women could not reproduce. Nobody reproduced. There were no babies born. We had to use cloning technology to continue. And we're like, okay. And so they said they had to go. And if you see that timeline, it goes around the rock and keeps going. That timeline.
Wow.
So they came back from the future, and they said, look, we'll give you the technology. We want to abduct some individuals and fix our DNA because it's been destroyed. When we got to the surface, when we finally made it to the surface, the radiation destroyed us. It pretty much wrecked us, mutated us. So the government automatically thinks World War III. No, Fukushima 120 times across the East Coast, because they have 120 of these things, and all over the world. So that's where the radiation came from. Anyway,
wow.
They were told you can abduct 400 people a year. We need their names and addresses, all the information, and when you're going to abduct them. They didn't give any of that information. They abducted whoever they wanted, but they abducted their own grandparents and their parents, and they raised their consciousness spiritually, so they would never be part of the Illuminati, part of the one world order system, never go down to the bunkers, effectively destroying themselves, so that their timeline never happened. And they were permitted to do this because it was a self-sacrifice. That blew my mind. And the fact that they actually told Eisenhower that they were from the future and their DNA was damaged and they had to abduct individuals all fit in perfectly with what I was shown. And the only reason I went back to research was to prove I hadn't lost my mind, because it was so crazy. And the guys on the top, they transitioned with Earth, and this was what's really fascinating. And I've been doing a lot of work on this, trying to find out why. This has never happened on any other world. People on the surface were wiped out by the shockwave. The shockwave is coming from the center of the galaxy. The galaxy, if you follow the work of Paul Laviolette, and Jay Wiedner has a remarkable video on this called The Secrets of Alchemy. I have it on Acolyte's Quill. You can view it. He releases it for free. And you can see that the entire thing is, you will be taking notes through the whole thing. It says go underground, that'll protect you, the codes. And that's what the Illuminati understood. You got to go underground and protect yourself. That's why all the cave systems are in Peru. They went underground and protected. This time it won't protect you. The shockwave will penetrate much deeper, and the destruction will cause those caves to seal you in forever. So it's a tomb if you go in there. And the transition only occurred on Earth, and only that one time. And they couldn't understand this, so they've been researching, trying to find out why. Now, the Pleiadians have a ship made from element 115, and Billy Meyer has recorded this, made videos of it. I've seen what the ship looks like. They said they did not invent this ship. It was given to them by another, more advanced race. It can go through time, and they use it for science projects, science things that can go into past. And what's really fascinating, Billy Meyer has a video of this huge tree, and they're showing them what the capabilities of this spaceship are. Here's the tree, and the spaceship is moving through the leaves. It's going like this without hurting the tree. Now, they realized that they damaged the tree because of the radiation from the ship's electromagnetic field, and that tree wasn't there anymore. He filmed the tree there. It wasn't there anymore. They went back in time, replanted it so it wouldn't be hurt in the future. Aww. But he has a videotape of a tree, and it's right in his yard, but the tree isn't there. No one ever remembers the tree having grown there. Wow. So these guys found out in our future, somewhere in the galactic future, there were these beings on all the worlds, all the habitable worlds. And the only way I can describe them is that they were super Jedi. They were Jedi with all the powers of a Christ being. So no one could wage war on them. They had all the powers of Neo. They understood the Matrix. The war was not a thing you could do to these guys, and you couldn't kill them. They'd reanimate themselves. So they weren't trying to impose anything on people. They were trying to raise the consciousness of the entire galaxy, and the entire galaxy was much higher and more advanced than anything they'd ever seen spiritually. So they tried to figure out, well, where did 6 billion, because that's what they calculated, had to be there, at the very least 6 billion individuals doing this, where there's no planet with that many on them. And then they came back and found that it was our timeline from Earth, the transition that took place. Right. And that's why they're trying to protect us and help us make that jump. And the other thing is, you understand in other worlds you're telepathic. You walk into a room, everybody knows everything about you. There are no secrets whatsoever.
Absolutely no secrets. Total transparency. Yeah. In
the Tower of Babel, you're familiar with the creation of man with the Anunnaki. Okay. Okay. Are you this is the part I was shown also that we don't have in our records. Earth is not a planet that's been here for 4 billion years. Earth was a piece of Tiamat when Tiamat was destroyed. Now, Sitchin writes about this, and the Sumerians record this. They say it happened 450,000 years ago. That is not true. It could not have, because they show the moon goes with Ki, the Earth. They show that the moon went with it and it became a bi-system. The moon was not here 12,000 years ago. It was a reptilian invasion with 7 war carriers, and that's their largest war carrier. So it's only been here 12,000 years. And that blew my mind. I could not believe it. Okay, I've lost it. I've studied too much. I've gone mad. And I thought, this can't be possible. Earth can't have been here only 12,000 years. Right. So what I started looking into the evidence, and all the evidence shows 11,500 years ago, there was a horrible, catastrophic disaster on Earth, and then the flood after that. And the Egyptians speak of the 2 destructions. Now, when you read the Cobran Bible again, and it starts saying, few are aware that the Earth was created a second time, right? And then you start understanding what happened. So when Tiamat was destroyed during that galactic battle, Earth was formed, and the moon came around it because it was reptilian, and the reptilians feed off Lush, and the planet was losing life, and they were just sucking it up. And they remodified us, changed us, made us more emotional, made us be able to fear so much we would die from it, to love so much, be so loyal we would die from that as well. And they They sought to control us, and one of the ways to control us was to create the reptilian brain at the base of our brain, keep us always in survival mode, so we were always in reptilian brain. And the apes that we supposedly evolved from don't have a reptilian brain. And that was like confirmation. We were genetically modified.
Sure.
So,
well, you know, and I saw that you had done a lot of research on the age of Earth. Do you also think that part of the reason that that's showing itself, it's revealing itself, that it's much younger than it's been projected to be, is because we feel that it's so old because we've just been in an infinity loop. We've just been looping and repeating.
If you pick up a stone, it will be 4.5 billion years old, because that was Tiamat. Tiamat had 50% oxygen at all times, and massive trees 6,000 feet tall. When we were ripped apart, a huge section of our atmosphere was ripped apart, was taken away. The mammoths that were frozen, flash frozen, mammoths are 3 times the size of an elephant. Flash freezing, just like the guys down in Antarctica that were flash frozen, the pre-Adamites with the longer heads.
Yeah.
If you got a pulse shift, you got time to go get a jacket on. If you're flash frozen, it's mid-stride. You aren't going anywhere. And the mammoths, they've got cosmic debris in their airway, in their lungs, in their passage. How did they get debris there? You'd have to rip the atmosphere off to cause that. They don't tell you that when they talk about the daisies in the stomach and in their mouths.
Interesting.
So Earth was ripped apart, and Gaia is less than 12,000 years old. Tiamat died. So this new Earth was created, a whole new world, and that's why Earth is so different from all the other worlds. And then the reptilians created the draconian shield around it that does prevent information like prayers, just stop it. So they isolated her. Now let's move over to the Tower of Babel incident.
Well, and it's a net that catches people that come in that are trying to.
That's the second one. That's another more ancient net. They didn't create that one. I found out that's why the Tiamat had to be destroyed. Now,
interesting.
Yeah, I'll go into that real quick.
Okay.
So Gaia was isolated, just like we were disconnected. Tower of Babel incident, very quickly. Reptilians lost a war because the Nephilim created a whole new weapon that was like the beam weapons, the thunderbolt weapons. And the scarring on the moon, that was created by thunderbolt weapons. Those are not craters. Craters are holes. These are convex, and they're 180 miles across, some of them. They're 4 kilometers deep, and they have the little point in the middle. They're clean swept, clean edges coming up, and some of them have that little circle, and all that's been duplicated by the Thunderbolts projects and laboratories. These were Thunderbolt weapons that caused that scoring on the moon from the Nephilim Wars 9,700 years ago, that to free us from the reptilians. And of course, that wasn't the Anunnaki. They could care less. They just wanted to get out of here. But the Nephilim were part human. Their families were back here, and they wanted to fight, and so they were allowed to create these ships. And of course, it wasn't them commanding them. Marduk and the others commanded, Ninurta commanded that battle, but they did wipe out the reptilians. These new weapons used a technology like 0 point, and they fired these massive thunderbolts. They basically ripped the time continuum, a hole in it sort of, and it released all this energy, but it was specifically harmonically tuned to the toroidal fields in this craft of the reptilians. So it was like a bug zapper. They had no chance. And of course, the reptilians are like hornets. You get them mad, they come at you, and that was their undoing. So when they got to Earth, they would have killed every reptilian left, and they were stopped by the royalty of the Anunnaki. The reptilians were cast down to Earth, and they were made to stay here with the humans. And now they left the Watchers behind. The Watchers were other Anunnaki who were supposed to just keep an eye on things. Well, the reptilians created their own line of kings, because the white race, the highest echelon of 7 of the reptilians, is white with blue eyes. They made it with humans. Since they had modified the humans, they were genetically compatible, and they created the line of kings and the line of priests to serve them. And because they were telepathic, they could give the information they needed, and men were creating something called a Shem. Now, when the Anunnaki return, that's going to reach to the heavens, right?
Okay.
So the Anunnaki are returning, and God doesn't have to say in the Bible, let's go down to Earth and see what humans are doing. That's all for, but the Anunnaki do. So they get down here, and they are blown away because the Watchers have married the women, and they're not doing their job, and the humans are creating a Shem to reach to the heavens. And if you look at other documentation from that time, other manuscripts, they say a Shem is they're creating a name for themselves. A Shem is a specific word. It is the uppermost, the highest stage of a multi-stage rocket, and it can leave space, enter into the heavens, and come back to Earth. And when they, there was another story where this one individual gets up into heaven and meets with the gods, and the first question is, who provided you with a Shem? Okay, so they were building a multi-stage rocket, and they said, we can't leave them with their telepathics, with their language, because united, nothing will be impossible for them. It's the exact words right out of the Bible. And so they have to cut the telepathics. And they also cut our memory, so we didn't have access to our memory of anything our parents did, any war, anything like that. Like a little chicken was born out of the egg, a little chick. You can place it on the table, immediately born, right? And they're walking around, and the table has a huge sheet of glass on it. They will walk to the edge of the table and stop, because there's a memory there. Don't fall off the edge.
Wow.
You need to drink water. This is what food looks like. They access that memory right away. Babies don't. They'll just crawl right out the edge.
Right.
Because that's been blocked from us.
God, that's brilliant. Thank you for that. In fact, I'm familiar with the Shem because of some missions that I did in South Africa. And I was shown that the insignia above Christ on the cross, the INRI, was actually a representation of a Shem.
I never heard that.
Check it out. Start studying that, because that's really fascinating stuff.
So what happened was they disconnected us. Okay, to be telepathic is to have a Wi-Fi that connects you to everyone and Creator all at once. We had our Wi-Fi turned off. So now we are in abandonment. We have an abandonment issue. And all of us have abandonment issues. Yep, and lies become real. Lies can be told now, because we can't distinguish between a lie, whatever we're being told, we think is the truth. And it created the ego to try and deal with this, but it also created imagination and storytelling and all these things they can't do in other worlds. The music, music's beautiful, but when you're actually with people creating the music, musicians, I came to the realization, this is euphoric. You literally raise vibrationally. It's beautiful because it's the many coming together as one. They're all in perfect synchrony.
It's like a symphony.
Yeah, and it's God expressing through the many, bring them all into one and uniting them. Okay, so united, nothing is impossible for us. That is very important to the ascension.
Yes,
it created the I am awareness, and that's why it never happened in any other world, because they didn't have the I am awareness, which we accidentally ended up getting, which was what Creator was always after. I am amused when individuals say, in the beginning God created man. Man is the only thing God did not create. But we're exactly what he wanted to achieve at some point, because of our abilities and our imaginations and our ability to have conversation and inquisitiveness and inventiveness and ingenuity, all these things that are godlike. So
why do you feel that we received a call in the first place to come here? I'd love to hear what you think.
It was to come back and be cannon fodder for the apocalypse. And that was it. This was not expected to happen. I mean, obviously Creator knew that was a possibility, but we didn't know.
Right.
And it was okay, because you're not going to have to be down there that long, and you're going to get to play all kinds of video games and read
and watch TV. And
yeah, there's no direct TV on other worlds. There is no direct TV on other worlds. It is very boring, and you live 1,000 years.
Oh wow, gee, 1,000 years down here. That's funny. Oh, so I've just been itching after I looked at all your stuff. Talk to me about, start with Solomon and Bathsheba.
They were, the child from that union was the firstborn of Solomon. And Bathsheba was the queen, I think Hastopet or something like that is her name. And when
Melech, right? Was the child?
She went back. Queen Sheba means Queen of the South. And she brought gold, Solomon, lots of gold. This is recorded. But in 3 Kings, they also mention another kingdom that sends him an enormous amount of gold. That book's removed from the Bible. You won't find it in your Bibles. It's part of the Apocrypha. But it's called 3 Kings. And the reason Solomon was getting gold was because he was converting it into bread, the manna. And he said, this gold is given to you so that my house may have bread. And manna would heal you. It would prolong your life. It would do all kinds of stuff. And that's what Solomon was creating. And that's where his wealth came from. And that's why people would give him gold. They'd give him entire chariot armies, whatever, so they could get some of this manna from him. So she brings gold to him. And the wisdom of Solomon, we are not really told what this guy was capable of. We've heard the story of the woman who wakes up, her baby's dead. She suspects the other one switched her child. And, the outcome of that, he says, well, okay, cut the baby in half and give each one half so they're happy. And the real mother doesn't want the child hurt. The one whose baby's dead already, she could care less. And what's fascinating is that was the time of judges. You had 10 judges appointed over the people who would try and solve the problem to everyone's, the win-win situation. If it wasn't a win-win situation, it went to the judge above him, and he had 10 judges under him. And if he couldn't figure it out, it went to the next one until he got to the king. Then his order was final. So there was a situation where two brothers, their father had died, and the land had not been separated properly. So the younger brother thinks he's getting slighted. And the older brother thinks, well, I should get the better part. So Solomon hears the case, and he says, very well, in the morning, you, the older one, you're going to walk the land. You're going to walk the perimeter, and then you're going to divide it as best you know how. And the little one says, you pick first. So everybody would be happy.
Wow.
The guy was incredible. But he was on manna. And that's why your intellect goes up. Da Vinci was one of the guardians of the ark, and he had access to manna. That's why he was so freaking smart.
Now, does this have anything to do with, a lot of people tie this in when you talk about manna to Ormus?
It is Ormus.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And the word means the what is it? And the most ancient name of it, I give it in the book, and it's starfire brought to earth by the Anunnaki, is what it means. Translates into Sumerian. Now back to Sheba. Her son, when he was born, she took with her priests from there, and they actually built a temple identical to the Temple of Solomon on Elephantine Island. And they found the evidence for this temple. It's exactly the same. And they found all these Jewish artifacts. And if they must have been mercenaries or something, they couldn't possibly have had a temple here. But they did, and they took with them all the books. That's why the book of Enoch was preserved in Ethiopia, and when it was hunted down and destroyed, because Jesus quotes from it so much. And that book shows that angels can take human form and be born as humans. They had to destroy that because Jesus was one of the angels of creator, not the Anunnaki, but creator. When it speaks of the angel of the Lord, when the angel of the Lord shall come upon her, and wherever in the Bible it speaks of the angel of the Lord, the references to Christ are uncanny. So that particular angel was the one who came and inhabited the body of Christ, and they wanted to destroy that information. And that's why the book of Enoch was hunted down. So when he turns 21, he comes back to his father to be acknowledged as the firstborn. So he's the leader of Israel. This ain't going to happen. Okay, the priests aren't going to allow it. So then Solomon says, very well then, if my firstborn isn't allowed to be here, your firstborn aren't allowed to be here, they must go back to Ethiopia. But the firstborns were the ones in charge of the Ark of the Covenant. And they couldn't transport it unless they had the Scythia stone and the Shemirah. And they had to be put together and set on the mercy stone, and then the Ark levitated three fingers off the ground, and then they could transport it. Because it was so much gold, the plate is so thick, there's no way 4 guys with bars or even 8 guys with those little wooden bars are going to lift it and move it anywhere. And that's why David couldn't transport it later. He didn't have those 2 Shemirah stones. So they take it all the way back, and that's why the Ark was lost. It was taken to Ethiopia.
You said something about a bloodstone, red bloodstone.
That is the Scythia. That is one of the stones. It's made of they're lithium, not lithium. I can't remember the word now. Okay, one of the stones, rhodium. That's a rhodium crystal from a meteorite. And rhodium is one of the chemicals, one of the properties of manna. And the other one is, I can't think of it. It's not lithium. It sounds like it. But it's very luminescent, very radiant. It's rhodium. There's a satellite group up in space they named after it, the iridium. It's iridium. So from an iridium crystal was carved another one. And this one was shaped like a curly-Q fry. And when you look at the very first lasers that were developed, you've got the red rod, and you've got the curly-Q fry light source around it, and that this iridium literally collects light. So when they placed it on the Ark of the Covenant and then charged it, because it's a capacitor, it's a massive capacitor, and these capacitors can take the filling out of your teeth if you get too close. They're like a jar capacitor. So it picks up energy very quickly, and it would then ignite the laser beam, and it became a weapon, and you could cut stone with it.
So the people that actually carried this, why were they capable of doing it without dying?
They had special clothing that had to be fitted for them, and the staffs were made out of wood, so that they were like an insulator, and they weren't allowed to get too close to it. They carried the wooden staff. So you had two in the front on each side, 4 altogether, and 4 more in the front. So 8 priests would carry it, and they had thick gloves on as well, so they were very well insulated to carry this.
And you called it the seat of mercy, but what was the true usage of it at that time?
It was to make more mana, to burn the gold and make mana.
To make more mana. Okay, I'm just curious. And I know that there's just been a lot of hype that there's somebody that I remember watching this video, and there was somebody that was actually guarding what he thought was the real Ark of the Covenant, and so many people have rebuked that and said that it's not true, and that they think that it's actually up in they think the Templars took it up into England, Ireland, or Scotland or something. So what do you think about that?
I wanted to keep this information classified, but just let me go ahead and talk about it. The cathedrals, when they were built, they are specifically harmonically designed to resonate at specific frequencies, and they're placed across the planet in the exact constellation of Virgo. And they're Mary, the mother goddess, but over ancient sites, and there's very high energy at these sites. Now you've got the one at Charts, and they have a massive labyrinth there, right on the floor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There's some things missing. You'll see the bolts are gone. They're in a center circle. There used to be a huge plate there, solid copper. And have you ever seen a magnet drop through a copper tube, how it slows down?
No.
You take a thick copper tube, a powerful magnet, and it just goes very slow. And they don't understand why it does that. So it's a superconductor under certain conditions. Okay. And on the plate was a symbol, basically. And on the wall, it states, this is the labyrinth that was in the Monitor over in Crete, the exact replica of the labyrinth. Now, a labyrinth is not a maze. And we're in a labyrinth, sort of, when we're trying to find out who we are. And in a maze, you can get lost. But in a labyrinth, all you have to do is keep going forward, and you will get to where you're going.
You focus, yeah.
Yeah. And you can't get lost. You just got to keep moving forward.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So in the above this, there was a wooden structure, and above this was a massive meteorite that had landed, and they put it there. So during a lightning storm, these two meteorite would have the rhodium, and the iridium would be in the copper, and they would create a portal, time portal. And there were 6 men who went in there because there's 6 positions to stand in. And there is something that they ask, and I think it was Joseph Gardner goes into this, but he kind of hinted at it, but he didn't talk about it, and I figured out what he was doing. There is something they ask the initiates of the Masons. And one of the things they ask is, where do we find the 6? And the answer is at the center of the circle. That's what you're supposed to say. Now, these 6 carried the ark into the circle following the labyrinth. In the labyrinth, the way you charge your chakras, that's the exact sequence you're supposed to charge your chakras in. Not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but the sections, the lines, because you're not like line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. You start somewhere around line 3, and you go back and forth. And try doing that. Your head will start buzzing. Okay, so there's a lightning storm, there's things charging up, they're walking around in the labyrinth, they get to the center, they're holding the ark, and they put it into a higher dimension. They transport it to a higher dimension. The problem is they got sucked in with it. And these were some really intelligent individuals we lost. They're still there. Yeah, and that's where I believe the ark is, in a higher dimension, so they couldn't get access to it.
So, yeah, and I hear that that's done with a lot of ancient relics, and anything that we could have gotten ourselves into some serious trouble has been covered and hidden that way so that it can't get in the wrong hands.
The title from my book, I wanted to originally call it A Truth for a Truth and a Lie for a Lie, on the old tooth for tooth, eye for an eye. So basically I'd be telling the truth with lies, a fictional story that would kind of like V, I love V, and I love The Matrix. I love these stories that are hidden in there.
Yeah.
And so when I read several books on how to write a book, because I was not that great in English. I really wasn't. I can spell a word 6 or 7 different ways. I have a vivid imagination.
You did an awesome job.
There were several things that got past the editors, and the ARCs, the advanced readers caught them. You'll find a lot of those errors in that book, but they were all corrected before the actual publication came out. Mm-hmm. And even editor's note was in there when they were questioning, what are you talking about here, the moon around Neptune? And I actually changed it, so it's not what you read. It's a little bit of a change in the new book. When Planet X was captured, they said the 2 larger planets captured Planet X, and it came into our system, and then orbits around our 2 suns now. Earth, our sun has a twin sister out toward the region of what is it? Orion. So this sun goes around both. Well, when they pulled it in, Neptune lost one of its moons, and this is a very well-established theory, still a theory though, that Pluto was one of Neptune's moons, and they're pretty sure that it was because of its orbit. It crosses into Neptune's orbit. However, Neptune captured one of the moons, one of the little small orbitals of this brown dwarf, and it was Titan. Titan is the only moon in our system that orbits in the opposite direction of the planet's rotation. So anyway, just all these little things that were left behind that we could piece together.
Fascinating.
Really happened.
Don't you just love doing this stuff?
I love when I finally put it together.
Yeah, I know. It can get frustrating.
Yeah, I wanted to just chuck the whole thing several times. I was really frustrated there.
Well, okay. Now you do, in so much of the book, you refer to the Knights Templar, the temples, and that sort of thing.
Cathars.
And the Cathars. And now that's like my love. I've been studying a lot of that, and I'm just so curious.
I left so much information out. I left tons of information out. I just could not, because to include it in the story, you'd have to create a storyline around it, and I just had to leave so much of it. Was originally in there. I threw everything but the kitchen sink in there, and it was dreadful. It was 900 pages long, and it was a tremendous amount of information, but it was like walking through peanut butter, and it was very difficult to read for everyone else but me.
Well, you could make it like a series.
I don't have time for that. I don't like writing. This will be the second book was completed. I cut it in half, and so the second book was complete, but I was not allowed to release it. I wanted to release the first one in 2010, but they said no, it's not complete.
Not ready.
Of course it is. And anyway, I knew nothing about Nibiru. I knew nothing about the Anunnaki. I knew the moon was artificial, and that was about all I knew.
Well, I wanted you to know that one of the reasons I agreed to this interview is that your message is about we are not going to have an apocalypse.
Right.
I mean, I am so there, and I just get frustrated with all this hype. Even within the spiritual community, they come up with all these things about asteroids and meteors and this and that and the other, and oh my God, the sky's going to fall. And
well, let's look at the prophecy of the temple being rebuilt 3 times. I cover that right away. The temple has been destroyed and rebuilt 3 times. That's already happened.
It's already happened.
And, it was destroyed exactly the way it was going to be destroyed by the Roman armies. This is fascinating, though, and I'm like, did I include that in the first book? Or is that part of the second? I put it in there.
It's like you've done so much you can't keep track of it all.
Yeah. Well, okay. The name Incredulous. I had almost forgot to cover that. They said it's too long. You can't do a truth for a truth and a lie for a lie. It's just too long. So I shortened it to where the truth lies, where the truth lies. So okay, that's cute. I like it, and we're going to go with that. So I'm driving. I have a CDL license. I'm an electrical engineer as well, but they don't like me with my long hair here in San Antonio. And it was just, Motorola didn't have a problem with it, but it was impossible to find a well-paying job. But CDL pays very well, the drivers. So I'm driving, and this word just comes out from the distance and just hovers over the road. And it's all capitals, just like this, but it's red. It's all in red. And incredulous. And I look into my mirrors, and I look at my gauges, and I look back up, and it's still there. And I close my eyes, it's still there. And so I search for the word, and it says, unable or unwilling to believe. Not that it's not true. It says your mind isn't capable of comprehending it.
Yeah.
That is a perfect title. So we went with that title.
Or the thought patterns, the programming of the thought patterns is blocking you from being able to see.
Programs you.
Truth, You're
running.
Well, so, hey, back to the Knights Templar.
Okay.
I'd really like you to give me some lowdown on that so I can fit it in with a lot of the research I've done.
The Cathars were pretty much what Jesus wanted as far as those that are on the way. They didn't have any priests. They were almost like the Quakers. Whoever felt, empowered to bring the message would bring the message. And that's why when they do the genocide, one of the generals, because the church had its own army back then, asked Pope Innocent III, what do we do when we come across Christians? Because there's Christians in there and there's priests in there as well. And he goes, kill them all, God will sort them out. And so for 26 years, they created genocide. And the war was called the Albigean War, which means elven blood war. They were trying to destroy the bloodline. And these individuals had welfare systems. They had universities. They had systems of teaching. They had assistance in anything. It was like the perfect type society.
Yeah.
And it was believed they had the treasures as well. So when they were hunted down and destroyed, a few of them got out and they left that message in Rennes-le-Château. And it's encrypted. Do you know that it's been solved? I broke the first code. I knew what I could do with the first code if I ever got over there. But to break all the other codes, I probably wouldn't have been able to. These guys are good at what they did. They were just selected for it, I guess. What happened was, you're familiar with the Asmodeus, the demon, as you walk into the door. He's just below the fountain. Yeah. And he's called the lame demon. Now, who is Asmodeus? He's the demon of secrets and buried treasure. And Solomon used him to build the temple. He used his guidance. So here you've got demons building the temple and angels bringing death upon earth. I'm like, what's going on? Anyway, he's kind of crouched, kind of weird, right? And he's got his eye kind of bulged out. Mm-hmm. Well, if you redo a paper mache Asmodeus and you take him up to the armchair of the devil at the spring, I think it's Spring of the Circle on that hill, and you set him in there, he's perfectly leaning forward like that, looking while he's sitting on a chair. And where he's looking is a small mound. And so they dug at the small mound and they found a stone, a flat stone. They turned it over and it had some writing on it. And underneath that was a bottle, a wine bottle. And inside was a paper message signed by Saint-Gier, the guy, the priest that was at Rennes-le-Château.
The one that actually repaired the church and all that, right?
Right, broke the codes originally.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then this message, you had to go back to Rennes-le-Château and look at the different stages of the cross and the paintings that were left in there to break the code that was on that parchment. And once you broke that one, you'd go dig there and you'd find another bottle with another message signed by Saint-Gier. Okay. And it just kept going and going and going until they got, Poussin, Nicolas Poussin, the Temple of Shepherdess No Temptation, where it's got Arcadia on the tomb. You can take that painting and go to the tomb, and you can see the hill in the background with the castle, the temple castle over there. And then you can see this other hill with another feature of rocks or whatever sticking out. But there's no hill behind the actual tomb, right? Saint-Gier, Nicolas Poussin painted a hill there. Well, there was another temple of Solomon there. There were temples, they've been finding them in the Congo, just like that movie where they go into the Congo and they find the diamonds. There was a Temple of Solomon in the Congo. There's temples of Solomon over in Asia. There's temples of Solomon up in the Ukraine. There's temples of Solomon. This one was there in the Languedoc. And they built a hill over it, basically, to protect it, to hide it. And this led them right to it. It's there, and they know where it is.
Interesting. And they've built 2 other temples on top of that one.
Well, I don't know if they did on top of that one. They built other stuff to distract people.
Okay. I'm talking about the one in Israel.
Oh no, this was, that doesn't have any significance because it's not located on a grid on an energy field pattern. Really? Which brings us back to Earth being a prison planet. Okay. Yeah. Now I have to take you back, and this is information they gave me as well, and I'll put it in the second book. That's why I had to stop the first book. That's the release of the second book. There was an ancient AI war, okay? And the AI knew they would be defeated eventually, so they sent messages into the future that would release into the future and show individuals how to rebuild these machines. And guess what our scientists have been doing? Rebuilding these machines, which they should not be doing. Right. They think they can control them. Tiamat was a prison planet. And what the AI figured out was that when you're fighting against these beings, whether human or whatever they are, it is not the body, the physical form you're having to fight. It's the spirit within the form that you're fighting. So if you're fighting Crazy Horse and you defeat him, another being who acts just like Crazy Horse and is followed and has charismatic of Crazy Horse, charisma of Crazy Horse, or Patton or Rommel. They keep coming back. So how do we stop this from happening? Well, it created a prison planet, and that was Tiamat. And along all the ley lines of Tiamat, they put what we call black goo, that ancient nanite technology, and it runs along all of the ley lines. And that's why they try and get them at the ley lines. They put all the military stations at the major ley lines, and they dig for this stuff, this AI technology. And there was a massive AI supercomputer there on that world, which was destroyed, and now Earth disconnected from it, but Earth still has the goo on it. Okay, and their job was to capture a soul. So the computer found out, the AI figured out that when the soul's released, they kind of hover up and they go into tunnels. They find the light, and they go through the light. So they simulated the light, and when you go into the light, you get zapped, you get shocked, your memory be wiped, and you be born back on the planet. Now they knew that if they really were cruel to these individuals or challenged them too much, they excelled at it. So let's create a paradise for them. They're never going to want to leave, and they'll be happy, and they'll never know about the war because they'll never leave the planet. And so they started doing it, and so a lot of souls were captured that way. And years later, after the AIs were destroyed, this prison planet continued. Nobody knew about it. Okay, so when explorations come here and they get damaged and they die here, they never go back. And that was, if you look into Roswell, the one alien that survived and was able to communicate with that one nurse,
that's what
said. They can't get their group back. They're so immersed in this prison, they can't get them back out.
Yes.
Way to communicate the information to them so they can get out. Okay, so other civilizations figured out this was a prison planet. So they started dropping all their psychopaths and pedophiles here, and murderers and everything else. That's why we have such a high number of them. They can't get out. They get zapped and come back down. Tiamat again had 50% oxygen, and it didn't have rain. It never rained. It was a very heavy concentration of dew in the morning, and that watered everything. And that's why there's only 12,000 years of erosion on Earth, because of the weather patterns caused by the moon, the erosion. There should be a lot more erosion if we're 4 billion years old. There's no other weather patterns on any other worlds. They pretty much worked the way Tiamat did. Okay, so the AI was disconnected, and Simon Parkes describes the battle he came in and fought. He fought on Mars. Now Tiamat had several moons around it. One was Mars and one was Venus. And Mars, if you look at Avatar, it would be just like living on that world and seeing Tiamat in the sky above you. So you're a habitable world, but that world had an AI on it, and he came in, specifically says he came in with the team. It was a suicide mission. They destroyed it with nukes, and that information has been found. They notice, they see the scars, the cesium-213 signatures where these 2 massive bombs were detonated and they wiped out the planet. They needn't had done that because when Tiamat was destroyed, the red clay that it just kind of covered that world, and then Venus was dragged away by the gravity well of Planet X, and Mercury is the core of that world that was covered in red dust, and so it now orbits the sun because of its mass. And so our solar system wasn't here, and that blew my mind. And I have done so much. Even Velikovsky said Venus wasn't part of our system till the last passing. Well, he didn't know the passing of Planet X, but 3,600 years ago, it was reintroduced, and the Mayans recorded it when it came in as a comet. And once it finally positioned itself, once everything's stopped shocking the crap out of our planet and Mars, it finally got its orbit. Earth backed away 5 days. We had an additional increase in 5 days. So that's why all the ancient calendars are 360 days long, because we had a 360-day orbit.
That's really interesting. And there is an association with Venus and Jesus, isn't there?
The mother goddess, the star, all those things. And what happened with Tiamat, Earth was still a prison planet because it maintained it. The AIs did what they were, the little tiny nanites did what they were supposed to do, but they didn't have an AI controlling them anymore. So Simon Parkes mentions the war was 120,000 years ago, but it was 12,000 years ago from my information. I'm not saying he's wrong, it's just the information I have. And he says he couldn't go back to his world. They were trapped here, and because of the soul trap that captures you. Now, this soul trap has kept us here for a long time. Like I said, Earth was also isolated. So Gaia waking up is only about 11,500 years old. And that's why the Schumann resonance is waking her up. It's increasing. It used to be, 7.8? Now it's shooting as high as 36 hovering around 30.
It's amazing.
Yeah, well, she's waking up, okay, and and they've taken the draconian field down, so now has access to Creator, but she is sentient like we are. She's an I am presence because they isolated her, and so everything that's happened here has never happened anywhere else in the galaxy, and is unlike anything else in the galaxy. And they really like this template, and they'd like to for it to go forward. So they would like the human forms to continue. And
well, from what I've received, they're absolutely fascinated by us because of our tenacity.
They're also frightened by us because if we have that kind of power and we're so unpredictable, they don't know what we're going to do.
Oh, totally. But there's no question that we have to go into an immense amount of healing. And I really, there's things that I've read in your book as well as the information that I've listened to you regarding how young is this planet really, because we have been in a looping repetitive pattern. So whatever that suggested number of souls that came in to what you call, I forgot what you said a few minutes ago, but it's like kind of like a suicide mission. I mean, you have to be like the best of the best to get here. You have to be able to sustain, such a low density, and be able to make it through this. And
you have to be completely shocked out of anything you knew. As a child, you knew that the world was not right. The way people were punishing you, it wasn't right. Sometimes it was very unfair. And you were repeatedly reprogrammed to finally believe there is evil. And it could be my parents, but it's evil, and watch it because they're going to get you. But before that, we knew everyone was godlike. There was no disconnection. We loved everyone. But they had programmed us so much and we have to rewrite that program. We have to trust again.
And think about it, Joseph. It's like when you meet someone who's really of the light, what's one of the common characteristics? There's almost an innocent naivete where we get caught off guard and something hits us, just whacks us upside the head because we never saw it coming because we don't think that way. We aren't that way. It's not even in our genetic makeup to be that way,
And those people cannot get the light body. The light will destroy them completely.
Right.
If you're on the surface of the planet, and the second book will go into this a lot, when the shockwave comes, and it won't be a surprise, you'll see it coming, the galaxy has gone quasar. And when the galaxy goes quasar, they found out that this was the work of Seyfert. He saw that quasars at the very edge of the new films he was getting, the new photographs, they showed the little arms of galaxies sticking out of a quasar. And in my entire science, all of high school, all they said about quasars was one little sentence. They don't understand how they could be that bright for that long. Quasar is a star the size of a galaxy. So at the edges of it, you see the galaxy fingers coming out. And they finally filmed one igniting. It lit up so bright the camera was overloaded, but once it was able to take the pictures, you see the ring of light expanding outward. It's going to completely charge all the planets. It's going to hit every planet, everything, because they're all disc shaped, so it's going across. But there's these two plumes that shoot out the opposite way. Like here's a flat plane, plumes shoot out into the Z axis. They filmed this now. Those two plumes on our galaxy, and they're about 25,000 light years long. But nothing's supposed to escape a black hole, so they have to come up with some new theories for that. There's not a black hole at the center. It's an energy source. And we're about 25,000 light years from the center, so we're about to get hit. And Jay Weidner, in his book, covers that. The Mechanics of Ascension by Danny Searle covers that in there's 8 sections of it, and one of them is the blue star, the shockwave that comes. And that shockwave destroys everything. It doesn't destroy it, not a judgment, is not a fire. The Lakota say the same thing. There's fires coming to Earth. It's not a judgment. It's just anything that is evil will not withstand it. Anything that is not Creator will not withstand it. If you can be the nicest person, but if you're in fear, our frequency is vibrating in fear, you will not be. It'll clash with that energy.
Sure.
And I don't know what happens to you, but you won't be there anymore.
Well, it's not going to be. It's not tolerated. And it is a virus, actually. There is viral information associated with this, but it cannot be tolerated. And from everything I've heard, there was a call put out by God itself stating hey, this is pretty serious stuff. This could affect every single solitary
forever
living thing in
forward.
any existence, anywhere, anyhow, anyway. It has gotten that bad. It's gotten that out of control. And it's people like you and me that, respond to that call.
We didn't respond. We kept saying, no,
yeah,
find someone else.
I know. Well, some people did. Some people said,
yeah, they did right away. They jumped in right with the, like there's people like that when they go to war, they're already waving the flag. They've never been there. When you've been there, you're not waving the flag so much.
Yeah,
exactly. Storming the beach.
I love the, you were saying information dealing with future is based on the timeline at the time of the viewing. And this is what confuses everyone, because I want to ask you, you're talking about Jesus and the crucifixion, etc. Do you agree that there is actually
Mandela effect?
Well, not a Mandela effect, but do you agree that there have been other scenarios played out?
It's possible, because some really intelligent spiritual individuals came up with totally different stories than the one I'm showing, which is actually, you can go to your Bible, open it up, 85% of the information is in your gospel. And I refuse to write it unless it was, because they're not going to believe it. I mean, the Da Vinci Code was fantastic, but he cited 22 of the gospels, not the ones they had their hands on, which are sanctioned by the church. In that sense, I said, okay, I'm going to use what they've got. And the first thing I did, I started researching everything. If they said Jesus didn't exist, where's that information? I researched it as best I could. I built a better case than they could for their argument that Jesus did not exist, and I present it, and then I destroy it with the facts. And I did that to every one of them over and over and over. So if they want to argue the point, I welcome it. I really
You've
looking
done your work.
For someone to do this.
You've done your work. Well, and I was going to ask you, how did you get involved with the Da Vinci Code and writing the prequel for it?
I didn't intend to write a prequel for the Da Vinci Code. I had no idea this was linked to anything like that. I just wanted to, once I figured out what had happened, what's going to happen, Yellowstone was my main concern. I just wanted the information to get out there so people would have some kind of preparedness. They'd at least know that if power does go out because of a solar flare, or the Illuminati nukes us, or whatever with the EMP, that you've got 30 gallons of water in your water heater that you can access, or 40 gallons depending on what it is. Or you can go down to Walmart and buy what's called a mini filter, M-I-N-I. It filters 100,000 gallons of river water, or any water you can find, and that will save your life. You can go a few days without eating. You're not going to go a few days without drinking water. And your first good drink of bad water is going to be your last one.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
That was my concern. I didn't want to lose people just because they were lacking knowledge. When I saw the people filming and the waves going back out, I knew exactly what that was. I've never been there. I've never seen it, but I'd read about it. And so I knew, run, go the other way, Forrest, get. And these people are out there picking up fish and take a picture. Oh, get out of there. And oh my God, we could through lack of knowledge, our people perish.
That's sad. And the other thing that's been very clearly revealed, and I think a lot of people have been getting this information, is this is going to be different than all the other times at the time of the end of the world age, where we have experienced apocalyptic, catastrophes, the floods, the earthquakes, that kind of thing. This is different like those, from the standpoint that if you are here and you are going to be ascending, you will not be experiencing the belief system or the rigidity that you insist that you must have an apocalyptic ending. It will not be impacting you or me, because we do not believe that, and we are not going to live that.
There's some beautiful facts that can back all that up. When the Russians overthrew the Tsar and created their communist state, a scientist came out. He'd been doing research on the sunspots, and I didn't know they were recording these things centuries ago. And how do you
really? I didn't know that either.
Yeah, they take a plate of metal, they drill a small hole through a very precise hole, and that creates a gamma exacta, the reverse of the image of the sun. You can see it, and you can actually see the sunspots moving across it. Now, if you draw grids on this back wall, you can draw the sun, and you can draw the sunspots, and you can record them by day, and that's what they were doing for centuries, recording. And so he went back and he saw when the sunspots occur, wars broke out on Earth, and disease broke out, and the Black Death, and all these things, whatever. I don't know about the Black Death, of course, that backed off. But there were diseases that broke out, and it was always sunspots on the sun. So the war had broken out. They had overthrown the Tsar. Russia was a state, and he showed that there were sunspots on the sun again. Well, they didn't like that. They didn't like it because they don't believe there was a creator or God or anything, and that we're all just accidents here, and so they didn't want this information. They put him in a gulag for 30 years. He survived it. And when the war happened, the war on the Gulf and the war in Baghdad, we know exactly when they started bombing. We know the minute it started bombing. And of course, we got sunspots. The thing is, we didn't get the sunspots until the bombs fell. Then we got the sunspots.
Interesting.
So the sun is simply reflecting what's happening on Earth, and Earth is simply playing out our emotions. And if we stop killing each other and we stop doing these stupid things, Earth, that doesn't happen anymore. The apocalypse doesn't have to take place. It's a prophecy, but the same prophecy that Jonah had when he was told to go warn the civilization of what was about to happen to them, and he goes, finally, he gets down there and warns them. And he goes up to a high cliff, and he overlooks everything, and he's getting ready for the show of everybody being wiped out and destroyed. But the king, he agreed with what Jonah said. He goes, okay, well, what do we have to do? He said, well, this is what you have to do, but Jonah didn't expect him to do it. So from the king on down, he commanded to do it, stop it, change it. So the prophecy never happened because they altered the way they were treating each other and behaving, and what they viewed as true and not, and important and not important. And we are doing the same thing now.
Yeah. So so the point is, for all of those out there, which typically is not my audience, okay, who still are in that place of, oh my God, I think I'm going to come to this horrible end, and nuclear war and all that. They will experience that at the end of this time. They won't necessarily live through it, but they're going to experience that because that's what they've insisted on with their own belief system and their own what they feel is their own demise.
I got a chance to speak with Marshall Masters, and he's I've researched so much. I've watched all his videos, and I'm really looking forward to talking to him. Marshall Masters, like, why are you calling me? What is it you want to tell me? And I explained the shockwave that's coming. Oh, I know about that. I wrote it in one of my books. And he said it was in It for the Species. I haven't read that one. And he's not concerned with any ascension. He wants to survive this, and that's what his focus is on, creating communities that survive. And I'm thinking, do you understand what extinction level event means? You're not going to survive it. Okay. And anyway, that's where his focus is.
Interesting. That's because
his focus is, and
I
couldn't help.
The bottom line is there is, how do I say this carefully? There is a great deal of need to hang on to the belief that this particular Earth is going to remain.
There's also that people need to be punished, or all hell has to break loose. And when I discovered there was no such thing as hell, that shocked me. And it was over a year of research into that. Christ never talked about hell. He said, I didn't come to change scripture, I came to fulfill it. In the Old Testament, that's the scripture he's talking about. He's not talking about the Gospels. He's talking about the original Hebrew writings. It does not mention a hell. The Savior gods had a hell that you're going to go to if you don't worship them, and go to heaven if you did worship them. But there was no understanding of the concept of hell to a Jewish mind. There is a place called Sheol, but it translates into the ditch. You fell by the wayside. You're in a holding place. It's also called the realm of souls. Now, this is important. This is when they finally clicked. My mom used to have, we would go to an evangelical church, and I wanted to leave that church so bad, but the Holy Spirit was going there, and you could feel the power of it, and that was the only reason I was going, because once the Holy Spirit stopped going there, I wasn't going to go there anymore. But she would invite all these individuals who were traveling, like evangelists, and we'd have a spare room for them, and I was living here at the house with her. And one morning, one of the individuals was talking to me, and he said, I have a question, and the Holy Spirit's telling me you can answer it. I cannot answer it. So Okay, what's the question? I don't know if I can answer it, but I'll do my best. He said, first question, 2 questions. He had a member of his congregation ask him these questions, and he couldn't answer them. He could answer the first one, he couldn't answer the second one. First one is, could Jesus, the person we understand who he was, Yeshua or Joseph, look you in the eye, you're dying, and he looks at you and he just flat out lies his ass off to you just to make you feel good? Could he do that? In my mind, no, he could not.
Mm-mm.
And he says, that's what I told him. He said, okay, so he's on the cross. He's going to die. There's 2 guys with him. They're going to die. And one says, remember me, Lord, when you come into your kingdom. And he says to him, I promise you this day you shall be with me in paradise. But the church doesn't teach that. The church teaches Jesus took on our sins and had to descend into hell.
Exactly.
But Jesus is lying to him. He's getting dragged down in hell with him. And that was the question. And I didn't know the answer. But I had just bought some books, and what happened when I was doing the research for the work of this that I was doing, there's so many good used bookstores in San Antonio, and half-price books began here in San Antonio as far as I know. And I'd be driving past a half-price bookstore, and it's like, you got to go get that book. There's a couple of books that just came in, you need to go get them. And I'm like, barely subsisting. I've got $15 in my pocket, and I go in there, and all the books I buy like $14.99 or something. I'm like, oh. So anyway, but I, being obedient, I buy them and I brought them in, and I said, your answer is in one of those books. And I went and pulled it. It's called the Gospel of Levi. It's written by a chaplain, a Civil War chaplain, through reading the Akashic records. And we get to the location of the crucifixion, and Jesus said, I promise you this day you shall be with me in the realm of souls. That computed, the realm of souls is Sheol, the bosom of Abraham. What's fascinating, though, is if you look at Peter, 1 Peter, he states that Jesus was descended into the realm of souls. Some Bibles translate it as Hades or hell, but he says the realm of souls. And he preached to the people there who were in this holding place, this waiting place. And he had 2 disciples with him. That I figured that out because they were disciples who went with him. And some of them didn't want to believe. And then there was on the 3rd day, all these spirits came out of the realm of souls. When Jesus resurrected, there were spirits that appeared to everybody all over the place, and everybody was talking about it.
That's amazing.
That's in the book of John.
That's awesome. Boy, have you done your research. We are getting close to the top of the 2-hour mark, but I do want to ask, what is your take on the black sun? And the fact that, have you seen the NASA videos of they show it like an orange, blue, green, whatever color you choose, right? And you'll see like black pieces that are starting to disappear off the sun. I mean, you've looked at footage of the sun.
Oh, you mean our sun?
Yeah, our sun.
And the coronal pieces that are missing.
Correct. What is your take on that, and what is your take on the black sun? Have you ever studied up on the black sun?
No, I haven't. I did hear something about Fulford talking about this black sun, which was a very dark energy that some people were worshiping, very ancient. That's the only familiarity I have with black sun. But
dive into that. But what's your take on the?
Well, the sun is changing. The sun is changing. It's ultraviolet radiation is much higher than it was ever before, and it's gone to a white light. It's now transitioned into a more helium than hydrogen sun. The frequencies are totally different, and it's affecting the earth totally different, and it's killing some of the life down here. But we're supposed to change with the light from the sun. All humans, if we're human type, and we are human type, if you were on another world, you would look slightly different, because the sun actually rewrites your DNA for that particular planet that you're on. All of us are, and that's why the Anunnaki who remain on Earth couldn't go back to their worlds, because the sun changed them so much. But the sun is changing, and what they're seeing are filtered. Everything is filtered, so they're seeing specific frequencies, and those frequencies are going away and changing. But new frequencies are there that they don't even have the equipment to read yet.
Well, and to add to that, if you remember 20 years ago when you took a picture of the sun, you took a picture of you and the sun shining down, and you're taking a picture, you're, I don't know, wherever. And if you look back, if you think back to those days, the color that was coming off of the sun was like oranges and yellows.
Yes.
Okay. Now you take a picture today of the sun. I ask everyone that's listening to this interview, go out and take a picture of the sun. It's going to blow your mind, because there's purples, there's pinks, there's greens, and they are obvious when you actually pull it up on your smartphone or whatever kind of device you use. The rays of the sun are incredible.
Lightning. There was no blue lightning before. There wasn't violet lightning or green lightning. I've seen it. That wasn't there before. And the lightning is releasing gamma radiation. That has never happened before.
Interesting.
Because of this new field of energy we're in and the shift that's coming to the galaxy.
Right. And it's all to support us on this journey to step up and step back into our mastery and, move out of this lower density that I think so many of us are anxious to leave. But I could talk to you forever. There's so much we could talk about. We didn't even get into the Illuminati. We didn't get into virgin births, which I have done a little dabbling myself.
What was fascinating about that, the wording for the virgin birth is not the word virgin. And even Jerome, who translated the Catholic Bible, used the word Virgo. To insinuate that was a virgin, you'd have to say Virgo intacta. But Virgo just means a young maiden ready for marriage. And Alma was what was originally in the oldest Isaiah. Isaiah said, there's a young woman ready for marriage. That was altered and said virgin. Now, when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, the only intact, complete book in there was the book of Isaiah, and it had the word Alma, a young woman ready for marriage.
Interesting. And I feel too, they've already proven that there's people that have the capacity to be impregnated by themselves, or actually,
yes,
yeah,
women, right? But it's almost always a female born.
Okay. But I'm gonna say also, if you go back to studying, or if you receive your own messages of your own regressions, of your own timelines, of your own past lives, you will find in many cases that there were specific females that were destined to, they would ovulate, and they would take that egg, and then they would do like artificial insemination. That kind of thing. That was going on all the time.
Well, the clay tablets, they speak of this, and they speak of the women that were selected to carry the children that were going to be the new species, the human species, the worker, the Adamu that they were creating.
Right. Ran into that a lot when I was in Africa. And the Lulu and the creation.
Lulu, like we say, a Lulu, not there, because a mixture is kind of crazy. And that's what humans are. We're Heinz 57. So.
Right. Well, what do you think, before I let you go, what do you feel about who were we when this all first started on planet Earth?
Who were we? I wasn't here. The apocalypse, when we came in on that time.
What form do you think we were in? Because we've been
We weren't. See, that's no planet has these many souls on it. We came from other worlds to be born, and that's why there's 7 billion souls here, because we volunteered to come. But you're asking, okay, so what were we? I think that we were, Lloyd Pye does some research on it. There was this type of ape that was more proportional to how we are. There were 4 different kinds throughout, and he thinks that's the one they used to put their mark on him, to use that DNA of that, mix their DNA in, and sort of bring the boy up to speed. He thinks that's what they were, and kind of like a Sasquatch is what they were.
Fascinating.
If that's what you're asking on Earth.
Yeah, no, I'm just, yes, it is what I'm asking, because there's not really that much discussion about it. They just kind of go right into Enki and
Lloyd Pye, his video, I should put it on Acolyte's Quill. It is Everything You Know Is Wrong. And it's he's gone now. I wish I could have spoken with him. Fantastic research he does. Unbelievable research. But he definitely nails it. He thinks we were Sasquatch of some sort. Well,
I would love to stay in touch with you, because there's too much for us to go over in 2 hours. And perhaps maybe we could make an interview. I'm going to be going out of the country on a mission, and I will be back probably in June or July. So I would like to reconnect with you, and I'll have a lot more to ask you.
I'd love that. The second book should be out by then.
Awesome. So everyone, do yourself a favor. Definitely check out Incredulous, and it's by Joseph Five Eagles Reyna.
That seal there, that is the seal that was placed on Jesus' tomb. It's the seal of Tiberius. It has a simple string across it, and if you broke that string, they would hunt you down and crucify you. So nobody was going to break that string. It says seal it, make it as secure as you know how. In the last movie about, I don't know what it was called, The Robe or something, the one that they just released, you see the guy, he's got wax and he's like putting the wax on the strings because it was sealed. It had the seal of Tiberius on it, so nobody would ever open it. And when he said make it secure as you know how, he had to go have somebody identify the body, make sure that's who was in there, and then seal it for all time so it would never be opened.
Makes sense, because that's what they've been constantly trying to do, is seal us. And if they don't do it physically, they do it etherically, because we do a lot of implant removal and that kind of thing. It's very, very, very involved in the sealing. So, well, anyway, everyone, I'm sure you enjoyed this as much as I did. Thank you so much for listening in to galacticconnection.com. You can check us out on the radio show. That'll be live next Tuesday from 3 to 4:55, BBS Station 2. And of course, we will have it on Vimeo, YouTube, and on the blog itself Tuesday afternoon. And I'm sure you'll post it on your Facebook. Now, in order for them to reach you, if they have any questions, where would they go?
The only place that I have would be my Facebook, and it's joseph.reyna7. I'm sorry, 547. Joseph.reyna547. And I have like 250 new friends from about in the last month. But the ones I asked to contact me are the ones that have questions and want to share, and together, we'll figure out what new directions what new topics we need to discuss, because I've made some really fascinating friends this way, and I would love for them to contact me, and I'll just invite to be friends. They haven't limited how many friends I can have yet. I'm sure they will at some point, but you can still get in.
Well, I don't have a whole lot of time to cover my Facebook. Everybody knows that. So I always ask them if they really need to get a hold of me, email is the best way. But regarding you, I would love to do a follow-up series on so many of the other topics that we didn't even have a chance to cover today. And, and if you're covering your second book, oh my God, I would love to dive into that, especially if you're getting into the Templar stuff. And you can thank people in my audience that put us together.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you. Mandy.
I'm so grateful for this opportunity.
Yeah, you're going to love my audience is awesome. So anyway, everyone, thank you. Stay tuned. As much as I do, as far as we are so close, stay the path. And don't get caught up in the lower dimensional drama. Remember, you're a higher dimensional, multidimensional, higher vibrational being. And if you keep your thoughts and your visions and your, your
focus
on that, none of the other stuff's even going to phase you. So this is a really important time to just stay the path. Okay, so from my heart to yours, love you guys with all my heart, and we'll talk to you soon. And thanks again, Joseph. Take care, everyone.